Hi there. Today I'm going to go over how to tie my heavy blob fly. This is an extremely effective fly to fish under an indicator for trout in still water and in moving water situations. And I think if it were sized up, it would also be an extremely effective steelhead fly as well. So to start with, I have a size 10 1530 series nymph hook from Daiichi. And on top of that, I've added a 1/8 inch Pink Panther tungsten bead from Firehole. Now I want to add a little bit more weight to this to really make it get down into the strike zone very quickly. So I'm going to do 5 or 6 wraps with a non-toxic 0.015 lead-free wire. Now you don't have to do it anywhere particular to get started. We're just going to do 5 or 6 wraps and then we're going to end up sliding this forward here in just a sec. So go ahead and pinch that down a little bit and clear out the excess wire. Now to secure the wire and the bead, I'm going to put a dot of super glue between the wire and bead and then slide that forward until it locks it in place and then let that dry for just a sec. Next, I'm going to use a 280 denier thread from Ultra Thread in a chartreuse color. That's just to stick with the bright patterns of this fly. Most of the blobs I tie are very bright, but you can tie them in more natural colors if you so choose. I'm going to wrap back, starting from the bead, all the way back to just about where the barb starts. So just in that first bend of the hook there, and stop and clear my excess thread. Next I'm going to add a tail. The two primary tail materials I use for my blobs are marabou, so I can use this chartreuse marabou, or I can use flashabou to add something a little bit more metallic, and that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to start with 5 or 6 strands of flashabou. To tie in the flashabou material, I double it over and bring it up on top of the thread onto the back of the fly and a little bit forward because I want to wrap back on top of it and secure it very well. So make sure you do 5 or 6 good wraps over the top of that flashabou. Really want that to be held in place. And then I'm going to cut the tail to just about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. I don't want a very long tail on these blobs. There we go. Okay, the next material I'm going to use is absolutely critical to a blob fly, and that is the F&F Jelly Fritz. This is the 15 millimeter in fire prawn. I'm going to do a 2-tone fly today with fire prawn in the back and Hulk, the green, in the front. Now you get between 6 and 8 wraps of this Fritz on the size 10 fly like this. So here's the Fritz material. To tie it in, what you first need to do is clear off about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of that material off the ends of one end to expose the underlying threads that hold the Fritz material together. And that's what we're going to tie in with using these white thread. So go and lay that white thread down there at the base of the tail and do a couple quick wraps with your thread. It's kind of tricky sometimes that Fritz wants to rotate. 2 or 3 wraps to lock it in, and go ahead and trim off that white thread in the back. And then you want to go ahead and bring the chartreuse thread forward about halfway up the fly. Now you can use your fingers to wrap the Jelly Fritz, or you can use a pair of hackle pliers. I tend to like using hackle pliers. So I'll go ahead and attach those. And then one of the key things with this Fritz material is you want it to be facing backwards. So you have to kind of brush those fibers backwards as you go so that they lay backwards and kind of give it that really characteristic blob material. If you have problems with this, you can wet your fingers and that will help lay those fibers backwards. They're much more amenable to work with when they are wet. So I'm going to go ahead and do 3 or 4 wraps depending on how much space and how tight I do it here. All the while brushing those fibers backwards to give it a round appearance. Okay, and you can also rotate the material in your hand to kind of help it lean in the direction or lay in the direction you want it to. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure the first round of Jelly Fritz with a couple tight wraps with the thread and trim off the excess. Now we're going to do the same thing with some green Jelly Fritz. So in order to make space, we definitely want to clear out that pink prawn Fritz and lean it back or lay it back. So if you wet it, it'll really lay back nicely. And then go ahead and tie in the green using those same white threads that you've exposed. A couple tight wraps. That's all you need, and then you can wrap forward to just behind the bead and go ahead and clear out the excess thread, exposed thread. And again, we're going to wrap forward using hackle pliers here, 3 to 4 wraps depending on the available space. I don't want to make them too bulky, but I want to make it seem like it's a nice full body fly. Looks like 3 wraps is going to do it. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring that thread around the bead and do 2 very tight wraps to secure that Hulk color Fritz and trim away the excess. Okay, so I really want to sweep back that material around the bead so that we can have space to work in here. And we're going to do a 2-turn whip finish to finish this fly. And on the first turn, I just always try and make sure I get most of the material laid down behind it. And then on the second turn, in order to secure the thread in there rather than trying to dab glue through all of the inside of all that Fritz, what I like to do instead is take a little bit of super glue and just run it on the thread itself. Don't want to have too much on there. And then as I pull that second line through and finish the whip finish, it'll just pull all that glue in there for me and secure everything so it's a nice and durable fly. And then go ahead and trim the thread. And there you have it. A nice blob fly.